Born and raised in Flint, Michigan, Carl Banks would go on to star at linebacker for the Michigan State Spartans in the early 1980s. But despite his strong performance, the All-American was still relatively unknown to pro scouts when his senior season rolled around.
I remember seeing him down at Senior Bowl, and the scouts were wanting me to look at him because they thought he might be in the mix for us to pick. But I only looked at him for 10 minutes, and then I remember I didn't want anybody to even see me looking at the guy again. So I never went back the rest of the week. I was just always somewhere else. I might have been looking way across, but no one would have ever known.
And to Carl's surprise, he would receive one of the most important calls of his life on draft night in 1984.
It's Bill Parcells from the New York Giants, and he said, I just drafted you, and I didn't draft you to sit you on the bench, and congratulations. And I was like, wow.
Teaming up with an already star-studded defensive cast in New York, Carl remembers what it was like joining the Big Blue.
I look at the New York Giants roster, and I'm like, okay, there's Lawrence Taylor, there's Harry Carson, there's Brad Van Pelt, there's Brian Kelly. All four of these guys are Pro Bowlers. So I'm just another guy in that group of great athletes at linebacker, and I show up to camp, and the first two guys I see are Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson, and I'm so excited to meet these guys, and I say, hi, Mr. Carson, hi, Mr. Taylor. And Harry, as only Harry could, he looks at me and he says, so homeboy, what the hell are you gonna do to get on the field? And I was like, wow, welcome to the big leagues.
But Carl would quickly prove his worth to his Giants teammates, making an immediate impact in his rookie season, appearing in 16 games and recording 3 sacks.
I got in there and I mixed it up with the big boys now, and I think that's when they realized that, this guy's got a decent skill set here and he can play a little bit.
After a subpar season in 1983, Bill Parcells' first year at the helm in New York, rumors were swirling that the young head coach was on the hot seat and in danger of losing his job. But the Tuna would right the ship and fine-tune his roster, starting with Big Blue's draft class in 1984, which has proven over time to be one of the greatest in Giants history, highlighted by their first-round draft pick, linebacker Carl Banks.
This was kind of the birth of the Parcells guys, because he said, I need guys that are going to fight because I'll give you everything I got if you give me everything you got. But I need to know that the guys that are going to stay here are going to be my guys, the guys that I can trust and the guys that are going to fight for me, and I'll fight for you, and we'll do this.
You with me, Carl?
Yeah.
I know he was looking on this side.
Bill, here, before you start telling about plays, you better tell him that we alert for the hurry up.
We got it, Bill. We've already been over.
When we drafted Carl Banks, there was a lot of second guessing from the fans and the media about, why would you take another outside linebacker? You got Van Pelt, you got Taylor, but really he added a lot to our football team to have Carl and Lawrence as bookends there, and it was quite a group of linebackers.
Benefiting from the tutelage of two of the greatest defensive minds the NFL has ever known, in Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick, Carl would become a key member of the Giants' feared defensive unit, known as the Big Blue Wrecking Crew.
The youngster who is destined to become one of the best in the NFL if he keeps playing at this rate, Carl Banks.
Everybody talks about Lawrence Taylor, and he was by far the best football player I ever saw, but the hardest guy to play against was, practice against was Carl Banks. I mean, you just couldn't block him. He was one of the toughest guys I've ever run across in the NFL.
The one thing about our teams, we were all tough guys. So we'd rather punch you in the face than to see you dance around us.
In Carl's rookie year, the Giants would win a playoff game on the road in Los Angeles, beating the Rams in the NFC wildcard game. But the very next week, they ran into the eventual Super Bowl champion San Francisco 49ers, who eliminated them from the postseason.
We got a taste of it against the San Francisco 49ers as to the level of play, how much better they were. So we come back the next year determined to be as good, if not better, than the San Francisco 49ers. But little did we know that the Chicago Bears, they were a pretty good football team too. And there were all these comparisons as who had the best defense. There was Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka versus Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, the defensive minds. And when we got into that playoff game, it was cold, it was bitter cold. We walk out, and the defensive linemen and the offensive linemen from Chicago, Dan Hampton and those guys, they're standing there with like barely sleeves on. I mean, they're cut up to here and arms are bulging out and they're looking crazy. And we knew going in that it was going to be a tough game. It was a battle of tough guys. Who's going to be the biggest tough guy? But they end up dominating us on the defensive side. Our offense just couldn't get anything going. And defensively, we fought hard, but we gave up some big plays too. We had some things that went wrong, punt that went awry, and we just had some mishaps in that game that didn't give us the best chance to win. And at that point, after that game was over, we knew there was another level our defense could go in terms of completely dominating a football game. It stung a lot because we still thought we were a better team. And they beat us, and we wanted to avenge that loss. And not being the baddest team on the planet and the baddest defense, the most dominant defense, it bothered us because we knew we were really good. And so that whole offseason, we had a silent mission amongst all the men that we were going to prove that we were the best team and the most dominant team in football. And we came back and started that journey.
After coming up short in their quest for a championship the prior 2 years, Bill Parcells' Giants were poised to make a run at the Super Bowl in 1986. And their young linebacker, Carl Banks, would be a key contributor to their amazing season.
Bill Parcells said that guys on this team are going to fight for each other. I'll do everything I can for you. You do everything you can for me. So over that 2-year period, that whole mindset was forged. And it was just a close-knit group because the offense starts off great and there's a turnover. Before Sims could get off the field, somebody said, "Don't worry, we'll get the ball back for you," and we go out and get the ball back. Either we stop them or we get a takeaway. We had a really good formula of guys that we knew what we had to do. And every component of team sort of manifested itself in that season.
In Week 9 of this historic year, Banks would deliver one of his signature plays, a crushing blow to Big Blue's bitter rival, the Dallas Cowboys.
White back, blitz is coming and the ball is loose. And the Giants have it. White was hammered.
Well, Carl Banks is coming, see, right in his face. He hits him square. The ball pops out. Jim Burt jumps on it. I don't know who you blame on that because no one blocked Carl Banks. I mean, you give a shot like that where that guy comes straight at you and no one blocks him, you have to have the doctor check you after a play like that.
That was team in its truest form because it was all about helping each other, helping the guys.
Cut down by Carl Banks as Tony Dorsett off the one.
You're not going to make a living running against this Giant defense.
Carl's 6.5 sacks in 1986 helped New York finish atop their division with a dominant record of 14-2. With Banks leading the way, Big Blue's stifling defense would shut out Washington in the NFC Championship game at home in front of their fans as the Giants advanced to Pasadena for their first ever Super Bowl appearance.
Content. No, we're not content. No, we going there, we expect to win. That's what we're going there for. We're not going there to lose.
Oh, I know that.
Or going to Disney World. That's not what we're going there for.
And fittingly, Carl would save his best for last in the biggest moment on the biggest stage.
From Michigan State, linebacker number 58, Carl Banks.
Heading into that game, there was not one thing that I left unturned in terms of preparation. So when I got out, I was in tune, and there was just nothing really that they could do that was going to surprise me. So I was just zoned in.
Watch Carl Banks, 58, coming from the outside. I think towards the end of the season, he's become one of the best players in the whole league. You can't run at him. You say you want to run away from Lawrence Taylor, that's good, but you have to run into him. You're not going to run outside against this Giant defense.
With the Giants trailing the Broncos late in the first half, Banks would come up huge when his team needed him most.
we're down there on the goal line, and goal line was kind of the ultimate test of your manhood. This was pride for us. And I remember lining up, and I said, I'm gonna make this play, no matter where it goes.
10-7 Denver. They're threatening to score again. Winder taken down at the 6. Banks.
I'll tell you, that was a great play by Carl Banks. It was a third down. Watch here, there's 58. Watch how he hits him. That was a heck of a play by Carl Banks.
I know that I had the best game of my career to that point. I knew that's what I wanted it to be.
I think over the long run, Carl Banks is going to be the best player in this Giant defense. I think he's going to be there for a long time. I mean, he can do it all. I mean, he can cover, he can run, he can tackle, he can do everything.
Carl would record a remarkable 14 tackles in Super Bowl XXI, and although Phil Simms would be named Super Bowl MVP, it was clear that on the defensive side of the ball, it was Banks that had propelled the Giants to victory, as Big Blue returned to championship glory for the first time in 30 years.
The Super Bowl champions are the Giants. Everybody's dream in football. That one time you'll be there.
It was the culmination of a lot of hard work, and it was truly the fruits of your labor. It did top any other game we played. I mean, the championship game was great, but that victory in the Super Bowl topped that one.
The rest of your life, man, nobody could ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did it.
In 1990, Banks and the Giants would embark on another historic season. But Carl's hopes of leading his team to another title were almost derailed in Week 4 against Dallas.
We're playing the Dallas Cowboys. I dove for Emmitt Smith, came up, I saw something bulging in my wrist, and I was like, wow, my wrist feels funny. So I run over to the sideline to our trainer, Ronnie Barnes. And so he looked at my wrist and he says, you're not going back in the game. I'm like, why? He's like, well, you just dislocated your wrist. And so we go to Washington, and I says, well, can I play? He says, if you can tolerate the pain, we could put a cast on it that will not cause you any further damage. So I went out and played the game, and then I came home and I had the surgery, and it was time to start rehabbing. The first thing I asked the doctor was, what's the rehab? How long? He says, well, if you were a construction worker, you'd be out 18 months. I don't have 18 months. But I knew, I said, I want to get back and play. And I'm aggressive as can be, and I set milestones for myself. And by the end of the season, I was back. I had a cast on it that would protect it from any further damage. But I knew I wanted to be there for the team.
But after storming out to a 10-0 start, Banks and the Giants' championship hopes would once again be put in jeopardy when Phil Simms went down with a season-ending injury in Week 15 against Buffalo, thrusting backup quarterback Jeff Hostetler into the starting lineup.
You know, the only time you really got a chance to appreciate Hostetler was in practice, because he had to play against our team, so we knew what his skill set was.
Jeff, you know, we might be going with a fake here. Banksy, you set on this fake if we run it? Where's Haas?
Snap. Let's go. It's a fake. Hostetler's going to pass. Does. He's got a receiver. Complete. And he's going to score. Carl Banks. Fake.
That boy Banksy. It's not too much pressure for you, is it?
It was all about team, so if one guy goes down, the next guy knows what he has to do. And when he stepped in there, he got the full support of every single player, his offensive linemen. They immediately embraced him, the receivers, everyone. And we knew he was a tough guy. That's one thing we knew. So losing Phil Simms, who was probably one of the toughest guys we had, and putting Jeff in there, we didn't lose much in terms of toughness, because Jeff was a pretty tough guy too.
They said the Giants were dead. Hey, they said we're done, baby. Hey, I don't understand them. They stuck a fork in us and said we were done. Hey, San Francisco, they're back. We're back. They're back.
Got one more? One more. Nobody thinks we can win, you know.
Let it take. They didn't give us a chance in this one.
After beating the Bears at home in the divisional playoffs, Banks and the Giants would head to San Francisco for the NFC Championship game and the highly anticipated rematch against the 49ers, who had beat them earlier in the season on Monday Night Football.
We were a team that just didn't know how to quit. We just kept fighting and fighting, and we got to find a way to win. And that's, what we did.
Kick is away, it's got the distance. It is good.
And the Giants are going to Tampa Bay. It's over for the three-peats.
They're getting on a plane, and instead of heading back to north, heading southeast.
Tampa down, baby! We're in the Super Bowl!
Where are you going?
We're going to Tampa Bay!
At Super Bowl XXV in Tampa, Carl would once again shine in the spotlight, helping the Giants upset the Bills. Behind defensive coordinator Bill Belichick's masterful game plan, the Giants' defense was able to slow down the Bills' high-octane attack.
He is stopped by Carl Banks.
Banks playing that zone just perfectly. Let him catch the ball underneath and then hammer him.
I mean, we beat the living daylights out of their wide receivers. Thurman Thomas had a big game, but it was late.
And then it's Carl Banks who really picked him up off the ground and wrestled to the ground by Carl Banks.
But you know what? It was too little too late for them.
Scott Norwood. He can fire the shot heard round the world now and win a Super Bowl.
No good. Wide right.
When our guys started jumping up, it was just, Went over to hug the coach, and he asked for a ride.
Take me for a ride. Let's go, nigga. Let's go. Let's take this.
That was the embodiment of what Giants football was about. It was such a great evolution of this group of guys, Parcells guys, that just were all for one and one for all.
Banks was named to the Pro Bowl in 1987 and is a member of the NFL's 1980s All-Decade Team. He retired from the game in 1995 with 39.5 career sacks, and Carl will always remember the Giants' legacy.
Once a Giant, always a Giant means that you played for one of the best organizations, and it means that you embody a sense of pride putting on a Giants uniform.
Banks remains closely affiliated with Big Blue as a radio and TV analyst. And in 2011, Big Blue paid tribute to Carl by inducting him into the Giants Ring of Honor.
This linebacking great out of Michigan State played 9 seasons with the Big Blue and won 2 Super Bowls. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Banks.